friends, welcome back. I'm excited, more than usual maybe. We are doing Bread Baking 104. With every one of our episodes so far that have been about bread, I've been layering on skills, a little harder than the one before. The world of baking bread is huge and it is so much fun, but it's a skill like any other. And if you don't know, it could seem like it's very overwhelming, or it could seem like, well, maybe I don't know if I can do that. A lot of people learn to make a simple sandwich loaf and then they stop there. I love a good sandwich loaf. It was the first video I did. However, there are some amazing breads that I think deserve to be included in your skill set and in my skill set, which is what I've spent the last few years, and by few I mean maybe 12, working on. And today I want to share with you our first video in enriched breads. Now, what does that mean? When we're enriching a bread, the breads we did before included the simple things like flour, salt, yeast, and water. Those are straight doughs, and that's what they are. Some of them take longer to make, so they have to rest overnight. We've added some of those skills. We are starting with the simplest, the really nice entry point into enriched breads. And I say it's simple, but don't misunderstand that it is fabulous. And this bread is challah bread. It is a traditional bread served in Jewish households. Very commonly, it is served for Shabbat. And I'm not Jewish, so I'm not going to even attempt to go into any of those details. I just know that it's amazing bread. And when we are able to travel all over the place just by having recipes for food, well, that's the cheapest travel you can get. And I vote yes. I've been baking for a really long time, and I just want to offer anything that I have so that we can kind of do it together. I hope you'll join me. And here's where we're going to start. We're going to start with challah bread, but because I can't leave well enough alone, and I never have, and I probably won't. When you're making a traditional kosher loaf, there is no dairy. They have rules about that where they don't mix meat and dairy, all that stuff. I don't want to misquote or give incorrect information. I can tell you for sure that meat and dairy are not mixed on a kosher Jewish table. And for that reason, the fat that they use in their bread, in their challah bread, is oil. It causes the bread to be super soft and tender, and it actually lasts a little bit longer because of that oil. That's great. But I was thinking because I'm always testing recipes, I'm always trying new stuff. This is like my laboratory. This whole farm is my lab, and I absolutely live for it. I decided, as I am not Jewish, and so I don't have that restriction, and I mean absolutely no offense whatsoever. I adore this challah bread, without exception. But I decided to have some fun and try something else. So what I did was I took the fat, which was oil, and I cut it in half with melted butter. Why did I do that? Because oil doesn't have a whole lot of flavor. It is contributing moisture and a really nice texture, but it's not adding much in flavor. I wanted to see what I could do to boost the flavor. Now, if I switched it all to melted butter, it would drastically change the texture. I didn't want that. I tried that. It did not work. I mean, it was still delicious, but it wasn't challah anymore. That's not what I wanted. So I learned that what was the best place to stop was halfway. The recipe will be included, as always. I will have the list down below and then a link to the full printable. But then I decided this dough doesn't just make great bread. And I have a surprise for you at the end of well, not the end. When we're done with our dough, we're going to make a braided challah for half the dough, and the other half, I'm going to share something that I love to bits. And it is a chocolate babka with a crumb top and a glaze. And it is the most delicious thing in the world. It is not diet food. So if you're on a diet, I'm sorry, please forgive me. I love you. I don't know what to say, because this is worth even a tiny little sneak piece. However, this stuff is incredible, and it makes a great gift. It's wonderful during the holidays, but I have more amazing stuff coming for the holidays. But this is like the entrance into that territory. Chocolate babka with a buttery crumb crust and a beautiful drizzle. We're going to have that today, and the other half we're going to do as a beautiful braid. Makes amazing French toast. It makes amazing regular toast. It's just good to sit there and eat while you're staring at your husband because he's annoyed. We're going to have a good time. I made this as easy as I can, so this is not difficult. This is our entrance to enriched doughs and we're going to have a blast. Let's get real quick through you don't have to worry about writing this down. I just want to real quick go over what we have. Flour, eggs, honey, and we have our mixture of half melted butter that is cooled, very important, and half oil. And then we have our yeast. I always use instant yeast, as I told you, so we don't have to proof it. I hate proofing yeast. It just feels like time I'll never get back. And of course, my usual pink salt that I love. If you remember from my first bread video, and oh, here, hot flash, I'm sorry. I always have a little bit of dough that I saved from the previous batch. I have always done this. I will always do this. That's what this is. It is not necessary. It will not affect your bread if you don't have it. But if you've been doing this with me, please don't forget to bring it in. We're going to save another piece from our challah dough, and that'll wind up in our container and in the fridge. And then that piece will wind up in our next dough. It adds this depth. It's almost like having a long-term starter, but we're still using yeast. And the beauty of why I chose this recipe to be our entrance point into enriched doughs, one of the main things is that we're going to be done today, no overnight rest. And when you're dealing with enriched doughs, most of the rest of them as we go forward do require an overnight rest. And I think after the last few days of us doing that huge pasta project, I think we need a break. We need to have some fun. We need to have chocolate, and we need to bake this bread. I'll meet you over at the mixer. Okay, here we are at the mixer. I figured out how to get a decent view and not cause chaos. Now this dough, the liquid ingredients go in first. And that makes life easy for us. We just dump them in. So here we go. I don't want my dough hook chasing the eggs around the bowl. I do not start with the beater blade and then switch. I find it unnecessary. I bake a ton of bread, and I would have noticed by now if that was an issue. One less thing. So we've got our eggs. We've got our honey. That is the traditional sweetener for challah bread. And this honey, I'm proud to say, comes from my bees. Now, I have, as I explained before, Italian honeybees, and I also have one hive that are these Russian, it's a mixture, a hybrid, whatever, and they are the meanest, angriest bees, and I told them I'm not sorry for stealing their honey. I'm sorry. I mean, I'm saying sorry to you, but I'm not sorry to them. So we added our honey. Now we're adding our fat. Now in this case, it's half melted butter that I allowed to cool and half of our neutral oil. We don't use canola oil in the house anymore. We used to, and we no longer use any of those types of oils. So this is avocado oil. Okay, I'm just making sure I get every little bit from my measuring cup. Paid for it and don't want to leave it in the bowl. And now we're just going to turn this on and let everything start to come together. Can this be done by hand? Absolutely. Do I, the hot flash queen of Virginia, want to do it by hand? I do not. However, I will tell you in advance that enriched doughs do require a longer knead time than straight doughs. Straight doughs are the ones without any of the fat, the eggs, any of that stuff. Those come together, even by hand, pretty readily. When you're trying to work butter and fat, different fats and oil into your doughs, and you're doing it by hand, you're going to have to knead that by hand probably a good 12 to 15 minutes. And I am not the picture of size 6 anymore like I used to be, and if I tried to knead by hand for 15 minutes, I'm thinking the paramedics would probably have to be here by minute 9. And I'm being generous with myself. So, you make of that what you will. Okay. Now we're going to start to add our flour. And we're going to do it a little at a time on low speed. In fact, I'm going to turn this off and I'm going to lift. And why am I doing that? Because if I don't, let me show you. This part here, if you don't lift the head of the mixer, this tends to catch the flour. And our flour is measured. It's measured in grams. And we don't want to leave any in this silly little spot. Okay? So for that reason, I lift the head of the mixer. I'm going to add my flour. It has been weighed in grams. As I told you, the scales are not expensive. I linked one in a previous recipe. So you know what I'll do is I'll link it again so you don't have to go fishing for it. But if you're going to get into baking, which I hope you do, I hope my chocolate nonsense puts you way over the top and you can't resist. Then, would you get out of here? There we go. I'm sorry. We're going to start to work that in very slowly. If you put it on high while the flour is still dry, you will wear it and you will be very unhappy and you will leave me a note that is not very nice. Next, we're going to add our instant yeast. And on the other side of the bowl, away from that yeast, we add our salt. Yeast and salt are not friends. They don't enjoy each other's company. And so we always add them on opposite sides of the bowl. Now, if you're not using that little extra bit of dough that we keep and we take on to the next, you just keep mixing here until you've got a nice, supple, shiny, beautiful dough. And it will be delicious. I'm telling you this as a fact. I've made this recipe so many times, it's ridiculous. If you are using it, the little dough that my little friend here, we add it now. I just dropped it in the bowl. Now that this flour is no longer wet, we can go ahead and turn the mixer on. And this is the result we want when we're ready to move on to the next step. Do you see the sheen reflecting in the light? See how this just stretches in my hand, passing the window pane test? You don't need to worry about that now. It's something I'll teach you about later. But in the meantime, that's what we want. And that's why it takes so much effort. And it's the reason that doing this by hand is definitely more difficult, because we need this sheen. This lets us know we're ready to go to the next step. We're going to make a nice ball, put this in our greased bowl, and let it rise for 90 minutes. Okay, excuse me, I'm sorry. So our dough has doubled in size. It's beautifully soft. You can see a little bit of bubbling here. Let me see if I can come in and get closer for that. Okay, there you go. So you can see the fermentation has begun. It's been doing a great job. Now that fermentation is where we're going to build flavor. That's the reason we don't want to rush the process. If we kept our dough in a much warmer environment, we could absolutely, excuse me, I'm so sorry. We could absolutely get this dough to rise way faster, but you would do that sacrificing the flavor. And we're going through all this effort. Why would we do that? We wouldn't. So I just wanted to show you that and always explain why, because I don't want you to take my word for it. I want it to be something that we all understand. Now, we're going to divide our dough, and then we're going to shape it. And this is where it gets good. Okay, as you can tell, I have no concerns about whether or not you can see my face, because my face is not relevant. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to divide our dough in half. Now, if we were being very, very persnickety, what we would do is weigh this and then divide it. I'm not going to do that. We don't need to go crazy at this moment. The dough is fabulous. We're just going to go ahead and eyeball a cut right down the middle. And to make sure we get as close to that as possible, we make a nice square for ourselves. So if we're off by a gram or two. It's very easy. So we take half of this dough and we put it back in our bowl. We don't make a ball of it. We leave it just like this. We're going to put it back in our bowl. We're going to cover that bowl so we don't get a skin. Remember, that's very, very important. Okay, and now we're going to take this, the half of our recipe, and we're going to evenly divide it in 3. So what we don't want is to have a fat side and a skinny side, because that's going to make our braid look really wonky. So what I'm doing is I'm trying to even it out. Okay, how do I want to go? You know what, I'm going to go this way, because I can see it better and stay in the frame of the camera. I'm new to having to consider the camera in everything I do. Okay, so I would bet these are very, very close, and that's all they need to be. Okay, if this was going to be for a major event, I would weigh it. I would weigh every bit to make sure every strand is just perfect. But we're not worrying about that right now. Okay, so we're going to move these aside. And this is the side that has been up all this time. You see it's quite smooth. And this side is obviously much softer. This is the underside, the bottom. Okay, so we're going to leave this shiny side down, and we're going to work this way. And we're just going to very gently, not extremely gently, we're going to stretch this out. Okay, watch what I'm doing. And then we're going to make a cylinder. Press this down with our thumbs so we create a sealed edge on the inside. It's nice and sticky. If we did it on the reverse side, it would not stick nearly as well. Okay, and then we're going to go over one more time, pull back towards ourselves, and pinch this cylinder closed. Really give it a good seal. Okay, don't worry about how it looks at the moment. We're going to set that aside, and we're going to repeat this again. And seal. Okay, now we go back to the first one we did, because that's the one that's been resting the longest. We're going to lay it horizontally, so it's close to our body, and we're not going vertically, we're going horizontally. And make sure your rings aren't doing something crazy. I would take them off, but I can't. All right, so we're just going to start in the middle and come out. Let's move my egg. Now I have a skinnier end than here, so I'm going to work in this area until it evens out. And when you have a nice long strand, and in my case I like to go, excuse me, Daddy, I like to go to the end of my board. I just use that as my measure. It works out well. I would say this is, you know what, I'll measure the board for you and I'll put it in the description. Okay, so now we make sure we don't have any fat ends and skinny ends, and we move that and we pick, which one did I do next? I think I did, no I didn't, I did you. And we do the same thing over again. If you've got a fat end and a skinny end, work that fat end so it becomes an even rope. Okay, we're almost there. I see a little fat spot right there. That's our little friend. And then one more. Now what I am doing is I'm kind of putting a little extra pressure on the ends. That's just out of habit because we tuck our ends in, so it doesn't matter. That's just a habit. Don't worry about it. But if you do notice that I'm doing it, that's why. Now I have a little thick spot right there. You may hear a little bit of air being released. That's fine. This is not the type of bread where we want big holes. That's beautiful sourdough and baguettes and all that good stuff. This is not that. We're just about there. Okay. Now, you see the seam. We want the seam side down on all three of our strands. Okay. Merge together. This candle is bothering me. Okay. Okay, and here we go. Over. Just like you were braiding your hair. Now I see I have a little boo-boo at the top. Now we're going to pinch this and go under. Now, because that always happens, I come to the other side. And we pinch and go under. Okay, now we're going to go just like this. We're going to move this to our sheet pan, which has been prepared. Okay, now we're going to pinch these underneath so they stay, and I'm going to press down. That is just, what are you? Nobody knows. Okay, so that's just going to sit here. I'm going to give it a pinch so we don't roll off. And this is going to do its final proof. Okay, and what you're going to find is that it's going to puff up and it's going to be beautiful. We're going to have to egg wash it, and I'll show you that in a moment. But traditionally, what you want to make sure is when you're egg washing, you get everything so that you don't leave any spot that's not covered by the egg wash. It's a big deal apparently, and so we should honor it. Okay. Okay, so now we are going to egg wash our sweet little baby here twice. We want to get in all the nooks and crannies. You can also, if you so desire, you can add sesame seeds. Very common addition to this bread. I'm not using them because, again, I want to stay with ingredients I'm fairly confident everyone has. Okay, now we don't want to leave pools of egg, so we're going to swipe them out. And then we're going to actually turn this around so we can see and make sure we got it all. Okay, then we're going to cover it back up, let it finish its rise. It's got a ways to go still. And then before it goes in the oven, we will egg wash it one more time. There we go. We have to make the filling for the babka. It's very important that the babka filling be nice and cool when we go to spread it on our raw dough. If you try to use something that's very warm on a raw dough, it will ruin the dough. It'll become very, very soft. The butter that's in the dough will leak out. It will become completely unmanageable, and you'll not be able to get a beautiful shape. And we've gone through enough that we want to have a beautiful end result. As I always say, in the description, the ingredient list will be there along with the link for a printable. But in the meantime, while we're here, we've got butter, semi-sweet, really good high-quality chocolate. This is not the place to skimp and buy chocolate that you don't love because the flavor of that chocolate is huge. We have powdered sugar, cinnamon, salt, and cocoa powder. Now, something about cocoa powder. It's important to use Dutch processed cocoa powder. I find that it tastes better and it has a better color. Now, when you're using organic, what you really want to do is watch, because sometimes it doesn't say Dutch process on it, but when you look at the ingredient list, this is what we're working with, okay? And it'll say that it's been treated with alkali. Let me see. There we go. It's been treated with alkali. And what that is the Dutching process. That is what makes cocoa powder Dutch process. So it either needs to say Dutch process or it has to say it's been processed with alkali to make sure you're getting the one you want. The other cocoa powder is called natural cocoa powder, and I don't find the flavor to have the right depth, and I don't care for the color. Okay? So there we go. Now what we're going to do is we're going to melt that butter, and we're going to melt it all the way. We're not going to leave even a little bit still floating around in the bowl, because we're going to add our chocolate to it, and we're going to mix it together and melt it. Add all our ingredients into that same container and stir. So I'm going to go and warm up this butter in the microwave, and I'll be right back. So now our butter is melted, and we've got it in a nice big container, and we're going to go ahead and add. Now we want to make sure there's no butter solids in there. There is not. We add our chocolate, everybody into the pool. We start with a rubber spatula. When we go to add our powdered sugar and our cocoa powder, we will switch to a whisk. If you try to do this part with the whisk, the chocolate will get caught inside this part, and that is an aggravation I don't wish on anyone. Okay, now we're going to let this sit for a moment, and the warmth that is left over in that butter will melt this chocolate. We want to make sure our chocolate is completely melted. We don't want any solids left. We are just about there. I see a couple of chips still floating around in there. Okay, we are melted. So now we're going to scrape off our spatula in the real world. I apologize for my silly restaurant lingo. And we're going to go ahead and add our cocoa powder. And we're going to mix that in. Make sure we get the sides. And then here we have our powdered sugar, our cinnamon, and our salt. Okay. Now you have a choice here. You can add a teaspoon of espresso powder. Espresso powder does not read as coffee in a chocolate dessert. It just adds a really nice, deep chocolate flavor. I'm choosing not to do that at this moment because I don't want to use an ingredient that it's likely not everyone has. Okay, so this is our filling. We're going to set this aside to cool. We're going to wipe down our surface because I made a mess. We're going to start to just get this started. If we start in the shape we want, it's easier to get there in the end. Okay. Now I take just, because this is a little sticky, so just a little, just so the pin can move over the top. You can hear the air bubbles. No, it's nothing to worry about. We don't want them. Okay. We're going to roll this out as much as we can before we cause tearing. If it looks like we're starting to tear, that's as far as your dough wants to go. Okay, that's about as far as that wants to go. Now, what we want to do is we want to grab an offset spatula and we're going to get our chocolate filling. Now, it's very important that we're going to want to seal one end. So we're not going to do chocolate all the way to that end. We're going to leave about a ½ inch. See if we can get that a little straighter. We're going to see if we can leave ½ inch on that end. Okay? Okay. And we're going to just slather. Remember, we're leaving that far end chocolate free. Okay, and we want it to be as even as we can. Okay. Now, the amount of chocolate this recipe will make is enough for 2 of these, but I wanted to show you 2 different things you could do with this dough. Okay, there we go. That looks pretty good to me. Uh-oh, a little light right there. No light spots. Okay. Now we're going to roll it up as if we were making like a jelly roll. Okay, and we're going to roll from this side that's closest to my belly up towards you at this end that is free. We're going to roll. Now you want to do is pull back a little bit and then roll. If you just roll, the filling goes that way. So what you want to do is pick it up, pull it towards yourself a little, and then fold over, roll over. And that keeps the filling in place. That works for cinnamon rolls, that works for everything. Okay, I have chocolate on my finger. Let me get that off. Okay, now we're going to bring, like we did before, we need to seal this. And we're going to do it just by pinching. And we're going to pinch all the way across. Seal, seal, seal. And I'm sealing the ends as well. And then I'm going back and double seal. Okay, then we put it down on its seal side and just kind of press down so it's not quite round. It's flattened a little bit. Now, we need our pan, which has been prepared. It's been sprayed and it's got a lot of paper in here because I'm using this as a sling. So that's why it's folded this way, and I can pick it up and this will pull my whole babka right out. Okay, so I just wanted to show you that. Now, we're going to cut down the center. I know that seems weird. We're going to cut all the way through. We want to touch the board when we're going through with our knife. Okay? Make sure, oh, get off. Make sure we're cut all the way through. Okay, we can put the knife in the sink. We're going to roll the cut edges so they are facing up. Okay? Some dough that didn't quite get cut. Okay. All right. Now, what we're going to do is very similar to what we did with the other dough, and we're going to braid it. But this is more of a twist because there's only 2, not 3. So I like to start from the middle and work that way, and then from the middle and work this way. So keeping the cut end facing up the entire way. Okay. See that? Now we're going to get our pan, and we have to move this thing into there. So what we're going to do is do that. Then we're going to pick the whole thing up, snuggle it right in there. We're going to cover this and let it rise for another about 45 minutes, covered, and then we're going to add our crumb topping, which I'll show you, and we'll be ready to go in the oven. So in our bowl, we have flour, sugar. I'm going to put in a little pinch of salt because I don't do anything that involves sugar without adding just a little bit of salt. It actually tastes a lot better. And then we're going to just grab a whisk, mix this up. This is just simple buttery crumbs that'll be on the top of our babka. We're going to add our butter, and with our hands, you can cut it in with a pastry cutter. For this small amount, I don't bother. I just squeeze it with my fingertips because what I want to do is form real clumps. I don't want it to be just kind of dusty. You know, I don't want tiny little, teeny tiny little crumbs. I want, you know, I want them to look cute. I want them to be stylish. At this point, I'm overheated and I don't even know what I'm talking about. Just ignore me. Okay, so you see, you just pick it up, and with your fingers, you just smear. Okay, we are good. Now, our dough has to do its final rise. This, we don't want it to melt. So we're going to take this and move this to the fridge. Okay, so it stays just right for us. And when we go to put it on, we'll break it up at that point and just kind of go like this, and it'll stick on there when we do a little bit of an egg wash. Okay, that's what we want it to look like. Okay, our time is up. We're giving our braided challah one more little bath in our egg wash. And this is our challah. Isn't that beautiful? How easy was that? But look at it. You can do this. Oh, she's pretty. Now this has to cool completely before we cut it. Okay, so this is what it looks like before it goes in the oven. Isn't that cute? Like he's wearing a tasty little outfit. Okay. And then we go in the oven. And then there was chocolate babka. Look at you. Oh boy. This thing is screaming hot. So the urge to pick the yum-yums off the top. I already burned myself once going for one, but in my defense, it was worth it. So here we are. We're in the final stretch, and none of this was difficult. Here I have powdered sugar in this little bullet. That's what they're called in restaurants. I don't even know what they're called in the real world. This little thingy. I have 2 tablespoons of milk and half a teaspoon of vanilla. In my case, homemade, but it doesn't matter. I have it separated because I have another tablespoon of milk here. I want our glaze to have a little bit of, I want it to be able to show, as opposed to being absorbed where it becomes, where it's a little thinner and it just kind of gets sucked in and it's almost, you can almost kind of see through it. That's not necessarily what I'm looking for. So I separated it so I can have more control. So here's my 2 tablespoons with a little bit of vanilla. And I have that separated extra tablespoon in case I need it. All right, I don't think I'm going to need it. But I want this to be pourable or drizzleable. We don't want it to kind of turn into so thick that we can't drizzle it onto our babka. Now, if I were being very fussy and during our holiday stuff, yes, I'm going to use a squeeze bottle so that I can be very, very exacting. But because this is just, we're doing this to have some fun and have something delicious, and I'm not going to be a total pain in the butt right now. I'm going to set that aside. You know what? We'll just stack that. I'm just going to use a spoon. So I'm knocking out the air bubbles. You can see the little dots from the vanilla. That's the nice thing when you use homemade vanilla. You get the little vanilla bean dots, which are kind of awesome. All right, so we're going to pick this up. See if I can get a little better in your frame. And we're just going to drizzle. Pick a direction. Don't just go in every circle. I mean, you can. It's not going to end the world, of course. But it tends to look more professional when you go back and forth in one direction. And for whatever reason, when you go back and forth diagonally, it looks even more professional. So that is the direction that we're going to go. Back and forth. Diagonally. And I'm glad we put our little plate underneath because it is catching our drips. That's why you want that, because you want to make sure that you come all the way over from end to end. Okay. So then here is the babka we made. Isn't that beautiful? You see, that's the whole point. That's why we do the double egg wash. So we get this beautiful burnishing. It's just beautiful. So let's just do it. Let's cut. Ooh, she's perfect. Let's cut another. Okay. Now I'm not even gonna butter it. I just want to see what we've got. Oh my God. Please make this. I'm begging you. Ready? Chocolate babka. This right here, You bake something like this for someone, they know without a doubt you love them